Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Commander Clash podcast. This week, we are going to be talking about finishers, and we're going to be ranking them in a tier list. We're going to be defining it as cards whose primary purpose is to win you the game. So that's why you're slotting them into the deck. They can fulfill other roles in the deck too, obviously, but you're basically using them as ways to win the game first and foremost, and then the other utilities are just nice bonus. And also, we're going to be excluding cards specifically that say you win the game, because we want to leave that for a future podcast. But anywho, joining me, as always, for this discussion is Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good, Tomer. How are you? Good to see ya.
I'm excited. I'm very excited for Vegas next week, too.
Yeah.
We'll probably have the next recording podcast is probably going to be over there, so that's going to be fun. And then we also have Phil, aka Brew's Kitchen. How's it going, Phil?
Okay. Just to reiterate on the definition of cards that win the game, I usually play cards that put me in a winning position. So if you see the cards that I'm highlighting, let's just say they put me in a very favorable position to win. Take that. Just a little warning.
Phil, you remind me very much of like how Seth and I used to be like 4 years ago in Commander Clash. It's like winning. What is that? That means I stopped drawing cards.
Right?
Right? That's awful.
So true.
I appreciate having that perspective back on at the table. And then finally, we have Krim, aka the Asian Avenger. Not Seth. I was about to say Seth. Whoops, daisy. How's it going, Krim?
It goes. Freshly moved into my new place, so
yes,
still getting unpacked and everything. So yeah,
nice. And you have internet, and everything is all good.
Yes, the most important part. Yes,
yes. The chaotic part is soon over, but glad to have you here. All right, and now before we jump into the cards, there are two things you can do to support the channel. You can like and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. And the second thing you can do is you can head on over to mtggoldfishmerch.com and you can purchase our beautiful deck boxes, deck sleeves, t-shirts, and so much more over there at mtggoldfishmerch.com. And that helps support the channel as well. All right. Let's kick things off with the finishers. And we're going to talk about some obvious ones, some of the ones that we rate pretty highly. And we're going to start things off with a certain beast that a lot of Commander players are very, very aware of and often die to or win the game with. And that's Craterhoof Behemoth. This is an 8 mana, 5 and triple green, 5/5 creature beast with haste. And when it enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain trample and gain +X until end of turn, where X is a number of creatures you control. So if Craterhoof enters the battlefield by itself, it's going to give itself +1/+1, and you're going to be attacking with a 6/6 hasty trampler. However, if you have more creatures, the damage gets much higher. They all get trample, and it is usually GG's when it enters the battlefield with 5 or more creatures on the battlefield. For ratings, Phil, Seth, and Krim are unanimous S, which is the highest ranking. Oh my god, I forgot to talk about the rankings. All right, for the rankings, for those who don't know, we start off from S to D. From S is auto-include staples, so you're basically powering your deck down if you're not running this card. A is really good overall. It's good in a very large percentage of decks, basically every single deck, but some exceptions. B is only good in certain decks, or small percentage of decks. It could be a staple in a certain archetype, but if it's not a multi-archetype all-star, then it's a B. C is average, it's like mediocre filler cards. We generally don't run these cards unless we have a certain restriction, like a budget restriction. And D is we have to have a very specific reason to run these cards. We basically don't run it unless we have a very janky restricted theme that requires it. So S to D. And for Craterhoof, we did triple S, Phil, Seth, and Krim, all S's, and I gave it an A. So what do you all think about this?
I mean, Craterhoof's just the best green finisher. It's the best overrun effect. I don't even know. Yeah, it's really good. I guess you can construct this scenario where it's bad by being I don't have creatures in my deck or something, but it just wins games.
Yeah,
it's so good. It's just boring. I guess that's argument against it, but it just does its job so well. It's always super lethal if you have, like, even if you don't try to build around it and say, oh, I don't have tokens or something, you usually have your commander and like 2 or 3 creatures, and that usually takes out at least one opponent at the stage you cast it. So it's easy to cheat out. You can blink it.
Would you put it in every green deck though? Like, I don't know. That's why I didn't put it as an S. Like, I think it's the best overrun effect. Like, of all the overruns that we have on this list, actually, there's one that I rated higher than this, so I take that back. Of all the 99% of the overruns that are in the format, what
can you possibly rank higher than this? I'm so confused. You can't just say that and not tell us. What do you rank higher than Crater Hoof?
So a lot of like decks, I will actually just not run this card because I feel like I'm not running enough creatures, or it's like 8 mana and like green is a splash or whatever. But there's one card I actually rank higher as an overrun effect, and that's Akroma's Will. It's one of the few S's that are on my list. Akroma's Will, for those who don't know, it's a 4 mana white instant. It's 3 and a white for an instant. And it says choose one. If you control a commander, as you cast a spell, you may choose both. So option 1 is creatures you control gain flying, vigilance, and double strike until end of turn. And then option 2 is creatures you control gain lifelink, indestructible, and protection from all colors until end of turn. So if you have your commander out, you get to choose both these options. If you have one of them out, or you don't have your commander out, you choose one of these options. I actually rate this S. And Krim gives it an S+, which is even a higher than S, and Seth and Phil give it S.
I mean, I might be a little bit biased, right? I mean, I've killed a lot of people with this card. Like, this card
I've died a lot to this card.
It's so good. Like, when you have your commander out, like, this is absurd. And even if I don't have my commander out, you still have the ability to just spend all 4, like, just a measly 4 mana. So Akroma's Will is just, like, by far my favorite. Is it an overrun? I guess it's like an overrun. It's a super overrun, right? I mean,
I use it primarily to like attack for lethal, so I think it's an overrun. But like the fact that you could just like fire this off and save your board from a wipe is so good. And then, like, compared to Crater Hoof, like, I think it does the exact same amount of lethal damage, like double strike, giving all your things double strike, and giving your stuff like +X and trample. This also doesn't have to it gets around blockers, so you don't have any damage being absorbed by any blockers. Even though you have trample, you'll go over it.
I love the trample, even though you have protection from every color. It's like, okay, cool.
Yeah. But it's like, and also, like, if you have your commander out, they have vigilance and they have lifelink. So even if you kill like one opponent with this, you're already set so you don't die to the crackback, which is a scary thing. Like, if you have enough to have lethal to kill somebody, then you also have to think of like, will I die on the crackback? And a lot of times there's like situations where like I could kill somebody, but then I will immediately die, so I can't attack. Akroma's Will is like, nah, you get to kill them. Your creatures still have vigilance, so they can still block afterwards, and you have lifelink, so even if your creatures like get wiped or something and then you get attacked, you probably still are alive from a crackback anyway. So that's why I think Akroma's Will is actually better than Crater Hoof. That's my hot take.
I agree with you. There's only one reason why I wouldn't say. Well, it feels like Crater Hoof being like tutorable,
exactly,
is like and reanimated is something that's worth mentioning. Other than that, I mean, I still think Akroma's Will is better because I don't have to jump through as many hoops. If I do have the card, right, I don't have to go and tutor it. I don't have to like reanimate it, and it only costs 4 mana, so I can hard cast it. So I do love that.
I would say both are S, but Crater Hoof scales way, way bigger. Like, you can't say, oh yeah, if you have 10 1/1 tokens, double strike doesn't really do anything, but a Crater Hoof just nukes everything at this point. Like, Crater Hoof always scales way harder than you think. Like, you think, oh, is that lethal? Oh yeah, you're at -200. Like, you always underestimate how insane the pump of Crater Hoof is. True. That's not saying that. Like, the protection aspect of Akroma's Will is insane, which warrants an S+, probably. Like, it's already S in the, hey, I'm gonna beat you down category. And then it's also like a B, I'd say, in the protection spell. Maybe even because of the protection, literal protection. It's maybe an A even there. It's a bit expensive. But yeah,
the versatility.
Kratos like really, really beats down people. I don't think
the versatility though of Akroma's Will is what puts it ahead for
sure.
me.
Yeah.
So it is just a better all around card, I guess.
I fills two roles. Like it's a finisher. It's finisher when you need it, but it's also just like if you're in a tight spot, somebody wipes the board, you're like, nah, Akroma's Will. I'm good.
I mean, Akroma's Will is definitely good, but I think you're really underestimating how hard it is to find. Like your white decks are just kind of like hoping you'd stumble into it. When Craterhoof, like. There's a million very playable green cards. They're just like, oh, here's my Craterhoof. Oh, here's my cards that you want to have your deck full of anyway. So I would argue that they're both really good in S tier and that you should be playing both of them in pretty much every deck. But I would say the ease of actually having, they say the best ability is availability, and I think that's where Craterhoof really shines because you actually have access to it when you need it, unlike Akroma's Will.
Combos. Like tooth and nail combos or something. You just say, "Oh, you play Kratos? Okay, so you win now." Like, we do have. Do we have tooth and nail on this list?
We do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of just works because of Kratos, because one of these creatures is Kratos. So I wouldn't say all around.
They're both. They're both.
It's great at what they do.
It's a green creature. Like green is the best color in terms of tutoring up creatures, and you can tutor it up for a mana discount too, right? Like, what's that card that's like? It's you sacrifice a green creature and you get to put a green creature from your library onto the battlefield.
Natural order.
Natural order.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's 4 mana, I think, right? So you sacrifice like an elf token or whatever, and you immediately, or like an Avengers Zendikar plant, and then you just like get Craterhoof. I appreciate that. I just think that like, I don't know, Akroma's Will is much easier to get the value, I think. Because, I mean,
yeah.
Honestly, if someone casts either one of these, you're probably dead. So I guess in the grand scheme of things, like we're quibbling over really like tiny differences because usually like the game just ends when either of these cards are cast.
These are the best of the best. And I guess on that note, we were talking about like Tooth and Nail. So Tooth and Nail is it used to be like one of the biggest boogeymen of the format, I swear, in like 2011. This is a 7 mana sorcery, 5 and double green, and it has 2 modes as well. Choose one, search your library for up to 2 creature cards, reveal them, put into your hand, then shuffle your library, or put up to 2 creature cards from your hand into play, so from your hand onto the battlefield, and it has Entwine too, so if you pay an additional 2 mana, you can choose both options instead of just choosing one. So instead of 7 mana, you spend 9 mana. You can spend 9 mana, put 2 creatures from your library directly onto the battlefield for 9 mana. So it's a lot, and it used to be like Mycontrike, Mikaeus Unhallowed, and Triskelion, which does infinite damage, and that used to be like when I started playing 2011. Like that was like,
yeah, people
were like, "Oh, you're playing Mycontrike." That was like Thoracle of the casual tables back then. Like that was essentially like, "Oh, you're playing Tooth and Nail Mycontrike." Ugh, what a try hard. And I literally don't see this card anymore. But
it still works.
Yeah, it still works. Me, Seth, and Phil gave it A's. Crim, though, much lower on this with a C.
I don't know. Is this as good as it?
A is probably too high. We're gonna pick it like, B. Never mind.
Yeah, like this. Yeah, I could see a B. This is more like a high C, a low B for me. This is not the finisher it once was, to where it deserves to be like an A, at least in my opinion. I don't know. First off, how much mana you're spending, there's so much stuff that you get for cheaper now, like in cost. So they almost do the same thing or can close out a game. So I don't know why I would play Tooth and Nail.
I mean, still gets your Craterhoof plus whatever else to win.
Sure.
It's a Craterhoof Avenger, no?
Craterhoof Avenger, sure. Yeah, it is a lot of mana. That is a drawback. Like 9 mana is a lot. Although Craterhoof, we just all like universally lauded, and it's exactly 1 less mana if you're not including the Entwine on Tooth and Nail. So it's not like
this is not a creature though.
Yeah,
that's a creature though.
That's true, but it basically does win the game if you resolve it. I mean, I can see an argument for dropping it down to B because you do need to be able to ramp pretty heavily, and you do need to be willing to like maybe dedicate a couple slots in your deck to things to get with it. Even, like, yes, getting Craterhoof is probably lethal, but you can also do more fun things. You can get, like, I don't know, It That Betrays and Cataclysmic Gearhulk and steal all your opponent's permanents when they sacrifice them. Or, like, there's really Archangel Avacyn and Nova Blast Worm, and you just, like, have Indestructible and blow up all your opponent's stuff. There's, like, so many cool ways that you can win the game with this card. So I probably overrated a little bit because I want to do, like, the fun wins that you never see and not just get the Craterhoof. But in all honesty, like, it is 9 mana, so B is probably fair, because you got to be able to ramp pretty hard to actually do it.
And unlike the Behemoth, like the Behemoth is a beast. It's a creature in green, and that's kind of why it's so strong. Yeah, is because it's a creature. You can like reanimate it for 1 mana or 2 mana with Animate Dead. This one you usually have to pay that 9 mana. So yeah.
like a Chroma's Will.
Biased.
The Chroma's Will is 4 mana. All right, there's a big difference between 9 and 4. Please,
but it's white in green. That's pretty
4
easy.
Mana.
I'm super biased about. Wait, well, how am I blanking on this? We just talked about it. Tooth and Nail. Yeah. Like when the card got released, I was like very young, and I couldn't fathom the text box on this because I was like the definition of a Timmy. Mm-hmm. I don't play it usually because it feels a little like I don't like tutors too much, and this one feels a little bit too easy. But yeah, I just love the idea of having like, oh, I play these. It's so, man, as a kid, when I finally had a copy of this, it was just amazing. I probably tutored out like random beasts with it, but man. And also, like what Seth said, you can set up some pretty cool combos. Like at this point, you could just win with any other thing, but It That Betrays and Cataclysmic Gearhulk sounds pretty awesome, honestly. I might keep that in mind. But yeah, A is probably a bit too much just because of the price tag. But you can. I mean, you are expecting to die when somebody casts it, right?
Yeah.
Even more than like
if you have 9 mana and you entwine it, I assume the 2 things you're going to get out are going to win you the game.
Yeah.
If you don't, then it's like it feels weird that you spent 9 mana for it.
Coiling Oracle, Flicker Wisp, blink it, draw 2,
Risen Reef and like Risen Reef and a clone.
Risen
like,
Reef Yarok.
Oh yes,
boy.
The clone just fits it probably.
Well, speaking of old cards that Phil likes more than us, Blatant Thievery is next on our list. This is a blue sorcery, 4 and triple blue. For a sorcery that says, for each opponent, gain control of target permanent that player controls. Phil loves this card. It's like one of his signature spells, I would say, for Phil. This is an S ranking for him, as appropriate. I'm a little bit lower on A, and then Seth and Krim are actually okay on it. B's. So quite a disparity here, from S all the way to B.
Okay, let me explain my B really quick before Phil gushes about this card for a while. So, my ranking is based on the fact that I don't know if I usually end up dying when someone casts this against me. Like, as far as actually finishing the game, I feel like a lot of times it's like, oh, that sucks, they stole our stuff, and then someone rasts and the game continues. So, as far as actually being a finisher that makes the game end, it's hard for me to think of this on the same level as a Craterhoof or an Akroma's Will, or a card that's literally like almost 100% of the time, or a very high percentage of the time, the game is just over. Blatant Thievery isn't exactly that, in my experience. I do think if you got 8 mana to spend in your blue deck, it is one of the sweetest and most powerful cards that you can cast. And it is going to generate, or 7 mana, excuse me, it is going to generate a ton of value. You are going to get your mana's worth out of the effect. I just don't know if it really ends the game, honestly, often enough for me to think of it as a finisher.
Good point.
I lowered it to B because I don't think it's a finisher. Good point, Seth.
Good point. I'm still staying at S, but yeah, you just win the mental game with this one.
It's very good value, which is very much Phil's brand. Yeah.
Like,
you get 4 things for 7 mana.
I thoroughly love the card, right? Like I am in I play Blatant Thievery as much as I can, but yeah, I just don't think it's a win con. So I guess that's my main thing.
Good point. Yeah. Still S for me, but no real explanation there. It's like,
I just like it.
I prefer like being at a buffet to just ordering food because I don't really know what I want. And it's the same. Like, yeah, I just check out what the other people do, and then I take their best thing. It's like, it's so much fun. Yeah, it doesn't really win the game, but it crushes the opponent's morale for sure.
It does.
So that's
It does
a win.
suck
I mean,
their souls
this
out,
is
yeah.
why this is why I run Homeward Path in all my decks now. It's because you, and also to some extent Crim also likes like the Gonti plays and stuff like that. Crim, I think Crim's more of like the black end of things, where he's like stealing from the library, and
Yeah.
Phil's more the blue end from stealing from the board.
Yep.
And
Love
the
me some
combination
stealing,
of both made me realize how much I love Homeward Path. How critical it is. Well, speaking of cards that a lot of people consider finishers, but we're kind of on in terms of being finishers, a lot of people actually mentioned Cyclonic Rift as a finisher. This was a lot of feedback I heard from Twitter. I was asking like why people still find Cyclonic Rift salty on Twitter, and people kept calling it a finisher. It's a finisher, but like some people just use it to delay, but it's a finisher. And then I asked on Discord for suggestions for the finisher tier list, actually, and somebody also suggested Cyclonic Rift. So for those who don't know Cyclonic Rift, I bless your soul.
Yes, must be nice.
It's a 2-mana blue instant that says return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand, but you can overload it for 7 mana to return all non-land permanents you don't control to its owner's hand at instant speed. And a lot of people were saying it as it's a finisher. I think the thought process behind that is that like if you bounce all your opponent's permanents, they can't block your creatures, so you can swing unimpeded. I guess. But in terms of for finishing the game, Phil ranked at D. I ranked at C because it's like, I guess, mass evasion. Crim B. Seth S+?
I mean, I had no idea how to rank this. I ranked it S+ because that was like our ranking that you play it in any decks, even outside of its original purpose, I think is what we decided on. But I don't really view it as a finisher. I have seen it finish games. Like, it can be a finisher. But when we were trying to come up with like definitions for this, I think we mostly landed on like cards that you primarily play to finish the game. And I would argue that Cyclonic Rift isn't that. You play it because it's like really good value and really good defense, and it's very flexible. And then sometimes as a bonus, it also ends up like bouncing all your opponent's stuff, and you got a big board and you win the game. So I don't know.
I've never seen it win.
Yeah, like it
still
doesn't
dead.
win the game. What comes after this might win the game, but like it does not win a game.
At best case, like
I've seen,
I feel like I've seen
don't
it.
know.
I feel like I've seen it happen where someone has a big board and they just like end of turn, bounce all your stuff, swing in with all my stuff, and kill everyone. I don't think it happens like super often, but I'm pretty sure that that's like
Wait,
happened
but
before.
You
in
have a
games I'm in.
lethal. You have a lethal board state, and then you keep 7 mana open, and then at the end of turn, like that's
mean,
not the finisher. Then that's just I could have just
can
gave
do
them
it, but it's
flying
just
or
not.
something.
Yeah, it can do it, but it's just not good at like finishing. Like we have better options. If you're looking at it as a finisher, we just have way better options. If you're looking at it as a board wipe, like okay, yeah, it's very good.
Still don't play it. It's an
I
awful
also-
card. Don't do it to your play.
We have the hardest time with this because I'm pretty sure I argued it wasn't a board wipe either when we did the board wipe podcast. So I don't know
do we
what.
even call it
Apparently, I
then?
have no idea what Cyclonic Rift
A
is.
troll card, apparently. I didn't know people were so salty. Like, I was genuinely, like, I run in my Zedruu deck, I run it in my Mech Titan Cauldron deck. I guess that's the only 2 decks I run it in. But, like, I never even considered it, like, that salty. We were talking about we talked about it in the previous podcast, though, without
Every
getting
podcast.
too derailed. If you want to check out, we literally talk about the salt scale on EDH Rec. Link in the right corner there. Boom.
Very good.
But yeah, let us know what you think about Cyclonic Rift. Is it a finisher? That's interesting. But we'll talk to something that I guess is more traditionally a finisher now, and that is Rise of the Dark Realms, which is ooh la la. Is it an expensive card, both in terms of price and also mana cost? This is a 9 mana, 7 and double black sorcery, but it has a very powerful effect. You put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. Not just your own graveyard, not just an opponent's graveyard, all graveyards. All creatures, all graveyards under your control. Rating-wise, I gave it an S. Phil and Seth, A's. and Crim is a B. So again, quite the disparity. I'm actually starting to think that it's not an S. I will probably bump it down to an A.
I might drop it down to a B, actually. When I think about this, it feels to me like everything that we disliked about Tooth and Nail kind of applies to Rise of the Dark Realms. It's like 9 mana, maybe not as good as it used to be, and it kind of doesn't always win the game, because unless there's like a haste enabler, you're doing this at sorcery speed and you build a big board, and then there's still like a turn cycle for someone to farewell or austere command or something. So it isn't necessarily immediately game ending like a Crater Hoof. So I think maybe it's actually like a B for me now, and it's more like for my Reanimator decks or my Black Ramp decks that I would like it, rather than a good in most decks card.
That is precisely why I have it at a B, along with, it's a little bit ahead of Tooth and Nail, but only barely. But for the most part, that's why I have it at a B. It's just not what it once was. And on top of that, it's like absurdly expensive, right? So I don't know. It just doesn't do what I want it to do anymore, I guess. Graveyard Hate is even more prominent than ever. So it just doesn't feel like it was what it used to be.
I was going to say that about Graveyard Hate, too. I feel like Wizards has woke up to the fact that we need a Graveyard Hate in our decks. In, Commander precons now, look at the Warhammer precons. There's a lot of, pretty decent cards that just incidentally hate out the graveyard. So I feel like that is also a vote against these mass reanimation finishers, that we're just getting more and more, good cards that also have the upside of exiling the graveyard, which really hoses something like Rise of the Dark Realms.
That's actually a good point. I remember being stuck with this card in hand a couple of times, not necessarily because of Graveyard Hate, but it also costs 9 mana or something. And sometimes stuff just doesn't die or go to the graveyard. Yeah. I got it at A. I'd still say if you resolve it, you're in a very, very winning position.
You are.
But you could argue for a B, but the effect is just insane. The text box in a vacuum is pretty gnarly. A vacuum with creatures in the graveyard, obviously.
It's such a commandery text box. It's just big and splashy. Tomer, I got a question for you, though. I might be sidetracking us a little bit. How do you compare this to Eerie Ultimatum, which is kind of similar? Eerie Ultimatum, it's a 7-mana Abzan Ultimatum, so you gotta have 3 or 2 mana of each color combination, and it gets back 1 of each permanent from your graveyard. So that includes non-creatures, but it only hits your graveyard. Let's say you're an Abzan, and you want one of these big reanimation finishers. Which one are you going for, Tomer?
I would put Eerie Ultimatum significantly above Rise, because it's so much easier to stack your own graveyard of things you want to get. Obviously, the cards in your own deck are going to be more desirable because they have more inherent synergy and you want them more than your opponent's stuff, I think, in general. And Eerie Ultimatum, it's going to get back your fetch lands that you cracked. It's going to get back, all your creatures. If you're a Planeswalker deck, it's going to get back all your Planeswalkers, all your enchantments, all your artifacts. So the fact that its hit rate is just so consistent and it's getting more stuff that you want overall, and it's cheaper.
Yeah.
So I gave it an A. Crib gave it a B. Seth also an A, and Phil an S. I guess, yes, on that note, I will move Rise down to a B. I still think Rise is good, but
Rise,
I don't think it's in the same league as Eerie. I think Eerie is better. Every time I cast Eerie, anytime I have Eerie in my hand, I'm like, yes. Yeah. I'm so excited. Even if I have it in my opener, I'm just yes.
I think it's one of the best Abzan finishers, or 4-color, 5-color. The downside is the mana is tough. You do need a lot of mana symbols of specific colors, but if you can actually resolve it consistently, wow, it is hard to lose after you Eerie Ultimatum usually.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I ranked it S. Sure, Graveyard Hate is a thing, but I've seen Eerie Ultimatum, we've seen on Commander Clash a lot of times just technically ending the game as long as the opponent doesn't have a farewell or something. But getting back sagas and artifacts and everything that got board wiped along the way, it doesn't get... It gets everything with a different name, right? So you don't get multiple forests, but the nature of Commander, unless you're playing Red Colony or something, then I probably wouldn't play it. But this is usually game over, or a board state that is just insane which is also game over.
Krim, yeah. I noticed that you ranked Eerie Ultimatum and Rise of the Dark Realms with Bs. Which would you consider better? And which one would you more likely run in your decks?
I would more likely run Eerie Ultimatum. Eerie Ultimatum is just cheaper, right? Like, so that's mostly it, and it gets back every permanent, so that is nice. I do like it a lot more than Rise of the Dark Realms, but it kind of suffers from the same issue that I'm concerned with when it comes to anything else. It's that there's everything just has Graveyard Hate stapled to it. So yes. I don't know, like if I see Abzan, I know I'm going to hate out your graveyard, right? I would say it is almost, you are powering down, so maybe I could pump it up. You are powering down your deck if you're in Abzan and you're not playing this card. However, I don't know, like, is the card like, I think it's just slightly better than Rise of the Dark Realms. It's cheaper, so I like that. But I'm just not a fan. I love Rise of the Dark Realm and like effects like that, but I think effects like that just aren't what they used to be in general. So maybe that's just me and like how I feel when it comes to these effects now.
I feel like your decks back that up. I feel like we haven't seen you Rise of the Dark Realms us nearly as much as you used to.
Yeah. Because I used to play in like every deck, right? Like in those effects, but just everybody hates out the graveyard without even trying, right? Like it just happens.
Yeah, I think the main, also another thing with Rise that, again, I'm getting so much value out of this lane, but I'm going to say it again, Homeward Path, this is a great way to counter even Rise from the Dark Realms. Like, it not only deals with like half her finishers on this list, I swear.
Yeah, Insurrection as well.
Yeah, Insurrection too, like, also Rise of the Dark Realms, like if people are using that more, if theft becomes more common in meta in tables and people end up running Homeward Path more, then these finishers get a lot worse. Eerie Ultimatum suffers from Graveyard Hate, so does Rise, but like Eerie Ultimatum at least gets around the Homeward Path. Although I guess I don't know how many like the viewers run actual Homeward Path like I do, because I've been abused so much.
I think, right?
I feel
like,
it needs a reprint.
It's almost $20. EDH Rec has it at 2% of deck, so I kind of wonder if this is a Commander Clash meta thing where we've just got so many times by Krim and Phil that it's like a staple in our play group. When in the broader Commander world, it seems like people play it with like Solkanar, the new Solkanar, commanders that intentionally like give themselves away or whatnot. It doesn't seem like too many people just play it for value outside of colorless decks.
I recommend it though. If you're listening, try out Homeward Path. It's really good.
You never know when you might
run
into Phil or Krim.
If you see in Vegas, add the Homeward Path before you sit down beside Phil or Krim.
I don't even own a Agent of Treachery. I don't have to worry about this. My deck is pretty budget.
Fair. Well, speaking of another theft effect that we rate very highly, that is the old staple Insurrection. I was first introduced to this card with the original precons, and we got to showcase it a little bit in the Commander Clash. But for those who don't know, this is a 8-mana red sorcery, 5 and triple red. And it says untap all creatures and gain control of them until end of turn. They gain haste until end of turn. So all the creatures on the battlefield, all your opponent's creatures, all your creatures get to untap and immediately have haste, and you get to attack. And generally speaking, you cast this, even if you didn't have any creatures, you steal all your opponent's creatures, somebody's gonna die. Sometimes multiple people die to Insurrection. And we rate this almost one of the highest ones. This is S for me, Seth, and Phil, and Krim gives it an A. What do you think about this card?
I have to throw an asterisk, because S means play it in every deck, but I actually think you shouldn't play it in every deck. That's its ranking based on its power. My opinion is Insurrection is a very unsatisfying way to win a game of Magic. I used to think it was cool, and then once you do it a couple times, for me personally, it became unsatisfying. So now I essentially never play it. It's on my like personal shadow ban list, because it just feels it feels like it invalidates everything that went on before that turn when you cast Insurrection. All the plays, all the cool things, none of that matters. You cast this one card, and then that's it. So I think the community might actually back this up because it's only played in 1% of decks, which blew my mind because I feel like on its power level, it should be like a legitimate staple that you just always run. But it seems like maybe other people are in the same boat where after Insurrection a couple times, it just stops being fun, I think.
So to prod you a little bit on that one, though, what if you rank like Craterhoof and Insurrection both S's, what makes Craterhoof more fulfilling in terms of like a ending than Insurrection?
So actually, when we talked about cards we don't play anymore, like 6 months ago on a podcast, Craterhoof was on my list for kind of the same reason that I thought it was a little boring and too easy. Although, I will say that I think the difference is, at least with Craterhoof, you have to have creatures on your battlefield. You do have to put it's not a lot of effort, but you do have to put a little bit of effort into it, and you have to build some amount of a board to have lethal. When Insurrection, you can literally not play a creature the entire game, and then it can still just kill someone or win the game.
But I don't know. I mean, like, it is an 8-mana spell and an 9-mana spell that I think it's fun. I don't know. I never got tired of getting Insurrectioned. We just got Insurrection by Phil.
Oh, they got my opposition agent. Oh, that's a shame.
How many times have I killed you all with creatures this season? Come on.
True. You are like the rogue player in the. You played rogues and merfolks against us fairly recently.
The creatures are good. They're
they
fine.
They have to be blue. They have to be small.
Yeah.
They have to be. At least half of them have to have flash.
Yeah, correct.
And he has to have counter magic backup.
I mean that is fair. But yeah, like I genuinely enjoy Insurrection, even losing my creatures. Right? I don't know. I think the card is like flashy. It's funny. It's no worse. It doesn't feel any worse than like anything else that happens. Right? To me, at least.
To me, it kind of falls into the Craterhoof thing. Like, I'm not sure if I ever played Craterhoof on Clash. It's just a little too, oh yeah, I guess I win. It's even worse with Insurrection because it really doesn't matter what happened before. That being said, I did play it in Dragon Week because I thought, well, everybody's gonna have a huge board and this would just be funny. It didn't kill anybody, or did it kill somebody? Somebody also.
You took me down to like 2 or something like that.
Yeah,
and then
somebody
Seth phased me by phasing his creatures out.
That's
right.
the problem. Yep. If Seth didn't phase out, it would have probably been lethal. But yeah, it feels a little uninteractive. It's kind of the same with Rise of the Dark Realm and Craterhoof Behemoth. Just insanely powerful effects that kind of invalidate what happened before, but yeah, I mean, you still can't deny that it's an insanely powerful card. It's kind of weird that it doesn't get played that much, maybe because back in the day it was the finisher, and now it's like, yeah, we've seen that already.
Let me ask you guys something, though.
Craterhoof. Craterhoof is also from a decade ago and sees a lot of play, though.
That's true.
It's
Although,
feature,
for some reason, they never reprint Insurrection. They reprint it in the first Commander deck, and I don't think it's been reprinted since. And Craterhoof gets reprinted a lot, so maybe people just don't know about it as much, like newer players. That could be part of it. My question is, let's say you want to be able to finish out the game in your red deck. What do you play if you are like me and you think Insurrection's a little boring? That's something I do struggle with. Is like, there's not a really great like I win the game card in red. So Tomer, what do you got for me?
I have one. I really like it. It was featured in a precon recently.
Yeah.
And Krim, you have it on your list.
Yes.
And I'm so happy. We're twinsies on this.
Yes.
It is Spectacular Showdown. It printed in the precons with Forgotten Realms. No, Baldur's Gate. So this year, I think, I don't even know. There's been like 50 products, but it's sometime recent in the past year, I think. Spectacular Showdown, 2-mana sorcery. Put a double strike counter on target creature, then go to each creature that had a double strike counter. Put on it this way. So you could do it on 1, or you could overload it for 7 mana, and you can put a double strike counter on every creature on the battlefield and go to each one. So not only is it good for you to like set a lethal attack, because you basically pre-combat, your pre-main phase combat, pre-combat main phase, there we go. You put double strike, you give all your things double strikes, that might be enough to kill somebody. However, you could just put mass double strike, goad everything on all creatures, and just watch the bloodbath unfurl. Like, everybody's gonna die, or they're gonna lose all their creatures, or both. Like, it's just hilarious.
Is this
I like
on,
this card.
on
I
Magic
love this
Online?
card. I played.
I don't
against
think it's
it.
on Magic Online.
It's
I have
it's
never
so
seen
fun.
it before.
It's so much fun to play against. But you know what? I find it funny that okay, so what do you have whatever insurrection at? Okay, S. Okay, cool. Cuz I think that this card is essentially an insurrection over time. And it might even do more damage than like you would think. This card slowly bled out the table. Like, this is a very, very fun card to play against. So I don't know. It's even cheaper. It's 1 mana cheaper. So I thoroughly enjoyed this card. I think this one's such a fun one to play with.
I think it's a lot worse just because the creatures don't have evasion or anything. So odds
Sure.
are, like, if you're like facing a lethal attack, like, you could just be like, all right, my thing has double strike, your thing has double strike, we'll just block, and it's fine. It also gives them like unless you're killing people with your own double strike creatures, you're giving your opponents a turn to react. So if they have like a board wipe or something in hand, they can just wipe the board.
Block? Who's blocking? Everybody usually attacks somebody else.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it's
then-
true.
and
Like,
then-
I cast it on like the Pride Month thing, and I had you on for that game, and it was like so. I just played the precon.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It was like I overloaded it, and oh god, it was so fun. But yeah,
It's
I think
such
this is
a
like
fun
good
card.
I think this is like a much more fun version of Insurrection, personally.
Yeah.
I like the power level a lot more, and I think I like how it plays a lot more. As far as like how strong it is, I think it, as you said, is like significantly less powerful than Insurrection. But for me, I think that's a good thing. I wouldn't feel bad about winning with Spectacular Showdown because there's some risk
it sounds
involved. Like, it might not necessarily work out. Although honestly, like, would you play this in just any red deck, or is this like a goad card? Like, you got to be goad thing, because I think it came in the goad, like the whatever the goad dragon is, and it's got a bunch of stuff that like cares about you making your opponent's stuff attack. There's like, you draw cards when that happens and stuff. Like, do you have to have those support synergies, or you can just be like, I'm a mono red deck, I want a way to close out the game, throw this in there, it's going to be fine?
I think it's like Insurrection, where like Insurrection's a little bit better in threat-based decks, where you can like sacrifice the creatures afterwards in theory, but it's so good that you just kill everybody anyway. So this one is like, I don't know, like it's a lot better in a Goad deck, obviously, but I think you could just jam this in and get some good value out of it.
And it does have that like Cyclonic Rift flexibility where you can just fire it off for 2 mana and build a Voltron threat and get in some damage. So that's kind of nice too.
Yeah, I like it a lot. It's fun. Speaking of lots of fun, though, this is another card that I see a lot of people use to kind of like, it was an old school favorite, massive value engine. That's why it's on Phil's list. But it also usually just ends up closing the game. This is Genesis Wave. It's X and triple green for a sorcery that says reveal the top X cards from your library. You may put any number of permanent cards with converted mana cost or mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Then put all cards revealed this way that weren't put onto the battlefield into your graveyard. So if you hit like any type of permanent lands, creatures, planeswalkers, artifacts, enchantments, they're going to go immediately into the battlefield. And then the instants of sorceries, they go into your graveyard, so they fill your graveyard as well. This card, I think, is still very good. And our rating scale of that is A for me and Phil, Seth though, and Crim B's. So not bad, but not super high.
B is such
I'm sorry, I'm distracted. Is there like an insect in front of your camera, Seth? Something's crawling.
I think there
on
is.
Yeah, it looks so trippy. I thought it was huge, but
There definitely is.
What?
I'm sorry for the
On my
listeners,
camera?
but there's
Yeah.
yeah, on your right hand. There
Is it
looks
still
like
there?
Why am I not
Yeah,
seeing it?
it's the little brown thing down right there. It moves.
Down
I'm
right?
sorry for the audio only listeners, but where is it? Where is it? I see it crawling right now.
What? I don't see
I
anything.
don't see it either. This is so weird.
Phil, is this on your monitor, maybe?
No, I see it.
No.
What?
I'm sorry
Can you-
to derail this. It just
which-
looks so
which
trippy.
corner?
I don't know how
Trolling
big it
me?
is.
No. Well, wait. Are
What?
you talking about the one that flew by?
No, it's
There's one there currently.
I mean, the viewer's gonna see it. Let's talk about Genesis.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Genesis Wave.
Genesis Wave.
Genesis.
Here's why I have it as a B. I think B is such a hard rating on our scale because it encompasses a lot of things. Like, technically, a card that's literally only good in a single deck, but it's really good in that deck is a B. Genesis Wave, I guess, would be a high B. I think this is a B that's good in more than one deck, but it does have requirements. You do need to make a lot of mana, and more specifically, you really need a lot of permanence. Like, if your ramp package is mostly cultivates and Kadama's Reaches and Nature's Lures rather than mana dorks and things like that, I think it gets a little bit worse because this only does things with permanence. If you cast this and hit a bunch of spells, it's really, really bad. So you need a very permanent heavy deck, and you need to ramp really heavily to make it worthwhile. I think elf decks can really take advantage of it. Other, like, big green decks, Omnath would be another one. Like, anything like that, land-based ramp decks, Windgrace or Azusa, things like that, it's really good. That's where I find this card to be super effective. But it's not a card I would jam in just any green deck, because I think I like the Nature Lore or Farseek ramp packages, and end up having, like, too many spells in my decks, especially once you have the green card draw, the Rishkar's expertises, and harmonizes. It becomes a little bit hit or miss for me.
Yeah, I just ranked it down to B. I gotta be honest there. It's just super fun. This is like cascading, but you get everything in the right deck. Like, yeah, but it doesn't really close out the game. Unless you're playing, like, in Landfall, it's actually pretty sick. Like, you're gonna get so many triggers there.
Yeah, you're
probably gonna win
Timeless
the game,
Tracker,
but...
Tireless Tracker, Eternal Witness, get it back to your hand, cast it again with all the mana you just made from your ETBs.
Yeah,
like,
like Lotus Cobra and stuff, you can
go off
pretty far with it. Yeah,
I'm keeping it as an A. I think it does win the game if, like, you untap with a bunch of stuff, and also, like, if we're saying, like, it's not good in decks that have a lot of instants or sorceries, then I think Craterhoof is, like, not also highly ranked either, because all you need to have a lot of creatures in your deck for Craterhoof to work. Like, I don't know how many instant sorceries do you have in your typical green deck? Like 12?
No,
I don't
like,
know. The hit
10.
rate is like 10. I mean, yeah, like it's like low.
I probably have 10 ramp spells, and then you have the
no
really in your green deck.
Rampant Growth, Nature's Lore, 3 visits, Farseek,
Cultivate,
Kodama's Reach, Cultivate. That's like 6.
Then you're up to 6, and then. Okay, maybe it's less.
I think you'll
than
have
I
like
think.
10 or so whiffs. I don't know. I think it's fine. Like, if I'm in a green deck, I just naturally I'm going to be permanent heavy, I think.
I got a question.
The fact that it hits on lands is huge, too.
That is helpful. Although if you just put a bunch of lands into play, you're kind of sad. You really want a bigger impact than that, I think.
Unless it's Field of the Dead and you're playing a tribal deck.
What number makes you happy with Genesis Wave? Like, what does the X have to be equal to for you to feel good about casting this? Because I think for me it's like
6.
15, 20. Like, I want to be really, like, casting this for a ton of mana. If I'm casting it for like 8 mana or something, I'm pretty sad.
I think X equals 6 is good. Like, they'll hit most permanents in my deck.
When I'm in green, I want 10.
Would be the lowest.
I want
but
10.
what if it's my 6 ramp spells we just counted up, Tomer? Cultivate, Kadama's Reach.
Wait, how big is Kratos? Kratos is 8, so you X equals 8. You're good.
So then you got to get to 11 mana.
Kratos.
Yeah, I guess then you would put all the permanents into play.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird how we rank this, right? Because with other cards, if they would straight up cost 15 mana, we would say, well, yeah, you're never going to play this. But this scales so well, and if you play stuff like Nissa or Mana Doublers, you get it to a point where it doesn't matter how much something costs, you can just pump 20 mana into everything. And the lands enter untapped ready, so you get...
I guess if we say Tooth and Nail is not as good anymore because it's 9 mana, we have to spend at least 9 mana for Genesis Wave equals X equals 6. But I guess based on my own consistently, I must rank this a B. Aw, I remember this was really good back in the day.
It's super fun, yeah.
I'm sad now.
Why we're talking Genesis Wave, can I ask you about one other card that I'm curious about? Because I noticed we had really diverse rankings on this card, and that is Majestic Genesis, which is 8 mana, Genesis Wave, but equal to the mana value of your commander. So a commander, even if it's in your command zone, doesn't have to be on the battlefield. So if you have a 2-mana commander, it's obviously horrible. If you have a big commander, I don't know, it could be more efficient than a Genesis Wave. We got a couple of Bs from Phil and Tomer, a D and a C. Oh, wait, Tomer just dropped it down to a C. So B from Phil, C from Tomer and Grim, D from me. My question is there any deck where you would actually want this? Like if you're playing Ur-Dragon, or you're playing like Vorink, like playing Galta, playing like some really expensive commander, is this in the conversation in those contexts?
I put it in Ur-Dragon because, like, imagine you spend 8 mana, you reveal top 9, and you just like drop all the dragons that are in your deck. That seems really good.
And I guess it is worth mentioning. I said it was exactly Genesis Wave. The one difference is it doesn't care about mana value. You just any permanents you reveal, you're going to get to put into play. So there isn't any mana value restriction. So maybe if you're playing like a 8+ mana commander, it's worth it. Like in that range, it's more efficient than Genesis Wave, at least. Although, the thing I dislike about it is you never get the upside. Because the thing I love about Genesis Wave is like, oh my god, I'm a green deck. It's a late game. I have like 30 mana. and I just put my deck into play. This will never be able to do that, I think.
It's more mana efficient, but it's not scalable.
Yeah.
Which is good and bad.
That's the pickle within it.
And you really need to have you need to have like 8+ mana value commander for it to be worth casting, or else what are you doing?
Yeah, seriously.
So, like, I don't know. Maybe one day they're gonna print like what about like what's it, Galta or something? What's it like?
Galta's 12.
Galta's 12. Yeah.
12.
Good, yeah.
So I mean, like you have like a Galta. You're cheeky in some sort of a green deck that has a really high mana value commander that you can cast for cheaper. Then I think that card becomes really good. But it's like, it's not even an archetype at that point. It's like very specific. It's good in very specific commanders, but like a handful of them. And it's good there, but like I wouldn't run it outside. But it is something to think about. Like I don't think I forgot that this card existed, to be honest.
Yeah, I
so like
did too.
Now it's on my radar. Like if I make a Galta deck or something, I will run this card. It looks very sweet.
Maybe some of
Galta specifically, yeah.
Maybe some of the big dinosaur, like Gishath, there was a Kama. I could see an argument once you get into that range, maybe.
What about this dinosaur? Oh, it doesn't really make sense with permanence, though. There was this dinosaur that gets cheaper for every spell you cast or something.
Thrasta, Modern Horizons 2 card. Yeah, but that's kind of like weirdly spell slingery. So I wonder if you'd be light on permanence, maybe, if you're playing Thrasta.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, so Galta, Vorinclex, big. And even then, yeah. It doesn't have the upside of Genesis Wave.
Oh, okay,
just keep it.
What about the legendary one? The one that Phil infamously cascaded into with his one Jodah Cascade before we killed him. How about that one? Is that a finisher?
I mean, in the right deck, it's insane, right?
Yeah,
it's a closer. Always be closing. I think it's significantly worse than Genesis Wave, even in legendary decks, because it misses on most lands, right? Unless they're legendary lands.
No, lands come into play.
Oh, they have?
You do get the lands, yeah. So if literally all of your permanents are legendary, it's a better Genesis Wave, I think, because it's one less mana.
Like in Jodah.
But
unless you hit it with Jodah.
Yeah, the one downside of playing in Jodah.
And you have to be like so heavy on legendary. It's like, obviously, I think it's getting better over time. I remember when it came out in Dominaria, and the first Dominaria set like 4 years ago. I remember it was like, it's really tough to get the hit rate up there with Genesis Wave. But now it's like much easier. Like just we're getting so many legendaries. I think like in 2 years from now, it's going to be like just strictly better than Genesis Wave in most decks.
It is sad that you can't hit the combo pieces we were talking about with Genesis Wave, like the Lotus Cobras and the Tireless Trackers, and like some of the best hits if you're trying to like chain together Genesis Waves aren't legendary, unfortunately.
That's pretty good. But speaking of cards that we think are pretty good in X style decks, Torment of Hailfire, aka the go-to mono black finisher for all that big Cabal coffers mana. What this spell does is loading. There we go. It's X and double black for a sorcery that says repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. So if X equals 10, your opponents have to repeatedly 10 times either lose 3 life, sacrifice a non-land permanent, or discard a card. And they repeat that over and over again. Eventually, when you run out of cards and you run out of non-land permanents to sacrifice, you do have to just start losing the life. So if X equals like 15 or so, or 20 or more, it will guarantee kill an opponent if X is high enough. We rank this as... What do we rank this?
I think it's A's across the board,
Yeah.
actually.
A's across the board. Yeah, A's across the board. That sounds about right.
It's a mono black all-star for me. If you're playing
Yeah.
mono black has all the mana doublers, so it's pretty easy to get the X really big. I don't know if I've ever played it outside of mono black. I'm sure there's specific like 2 or 3 color or 4 color decks that might want it, but for me it's a card. If I'm mono black, I'm going to heavily consider it in pretty much any mono black deck. But if I'm 2+ colors, I usually forget about Torment.
Yeah, one thing I gotta say though, like at least when I say, oh, some cards are boring if they just win the game, this is literally just a slot machine where you throw in money and at some point you say, oh, yep, I cast it for enough mana. We don't even need to resolve it. Just go. I mean, this is just a game over button that you press at some point. I guess that's the point of playing is kind of winning, but
You need to have so much mana. Like, even if X equals 10 is usually not enough to kill somebody with this, you really need to be like X equals 15 or higher. So you need like 17 mana for it to like reliably kill the table. So I run into Shiro, and yes, it's a little bit boring, but it's like, yeah, if I have 17 mana, I should be able to kill you, right? Like, I should be able to dump that 17 mana into something. That's why, like,
you should be casting like 8 Relentless Rats or something. That's the correct way to play mono black, Tomer.
Yeah, I feel like once you've spent a certain amount, like a threshold of mana, you should just like there should be spells that just be like, all right, you spent 15 mana, GG, or 20 mana, GG, you win. I think that's fine.
Yeah, I guess the game does have to end.
I'm biased because I run it.
That's true.
Yeah, I'm biased because I run it in my mono black. But it's like, what else am I supposed to do? Like, the Shiro doesn't win the game, and the 2/2 Bushido's not going to charge in and finish you off by himself, usually. I mean, sometimes he will, but, like, you know, Torment of Hellfire. It's good. It's good fair magic, you know? 15 mana.
I don't even play this anymore. Mostly just for those reasons. It feels like it's kind of easy and also a little bit more fragile than it used to be, right? Everybody knows to blow up your like Cryptghast or whatever. So oftentimes, like, you know, like I'm just like, okay, cool, I can do this for like X is 4 because so I don't know. I just personally haven't enjoyed this card as much anymore, and I definitely taken it out of my decks. Maybe in like a Spellslinger deck or something, where I know I can like float tons of mana, like in a Kess deck or something. That's where I'll probably pop off with it. Otherwise, I'm not exactly high on this card like I used to be.
You know,
it's also weak against token decks. Like, if you're against a treasure deck or against just like any 1/1 token deck, Elf Ball or something like that, if they have like 20 things to sacrifice and your Torment of Hellfire is just not going to do much against them, you might as well board wipe.
I guess the amount of treasures we've gotten lately probably makes this card worse, really. I hadn't really thought that through, but it's much like someone Dockside, and then you cast those, and I'm like, oh, sure, I'll sack, you know, all my Dockside treasures. Like, you did nothing with your 17 mana. What do you think about Exsanguinate? I don't even think Exsanguinate was on my list, but when Krim mentioned not really playing Torment anymore, when we first started doing Commander Clash, Exsanguinate was in every black deck. I had it in every single one, and that was my, like, haha, everyone's kind of low on life. I got a bunch of mana. I gotcha. It's double black and X, and each opponent loses X life. You gain life equal to life lost that way. That was my haha, like, I gotcha, I won the game card, and now I never play Exsanguinate. Is that a good finisher anymore, or is that kind of just bad Torment in 2022? Is it just the worst version of Torment of Hellfire?
We had it on our list.
We give it all Bs. So instead of A's for Torment, we gave it Bs all around.
Okay, I might actually swap that around.
Yeah.
The one thing Exsanguinate has going for it is you can cast it for like X5 and gain 20 life, and sometimes 15 life, and sometimes that's actually pretty relevant, just as like a life gain spell almost.
I mean, exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely. probably play it more. I mean, Torment is better at winning the game, but if you have 20 mana, you might as well have 40 mana or something. So I think that might be a little out there. But yeah, casting Exsanguinate for like 8 or something in the late game will probably buy you a couple of turns, maybe kill one person just on accident, but you get so much life from it. So I guess while Torment is just good if you actually win with it, although actually, isn't it just good to Torment for 10 and let the table suffer and then prey on the weaker opponents afterwards? Like, it's not too bad. You just usually don't cast it if it's not lethal. But Exsanguinate, you actually easily gain like 21 life or something.
I mean, I run both into Shiro, and Exsanguinate is exactly like a stall for time thing. I don't usually kill people with Exsanguinate, because like, if you have like 12 mana, it's X equals 10. Unless people are below 10 life, it's not going to kill anybody. So it's not really that good as a finisher. I think Torment of Healfire, even with tokens in the meta, is going to be still better, because every single one is like potentially 3, even though you have to make them discard cards and stuff. So it's not really, but it's still going to be a better rate than 1 mana for 1, which is what Exsanguinate is. But I do just fire this off for like X equals 10, and then I gain 30 life, and then I'm just sitting, I'm vibing until I get more mana so I can cast Torment of Healfire for lethal. I think they're both good, but I think like in terms of finishing the game off, I think Torment's better than Exsanguinate, but Exsanguinate's still very good. And also, most people just run Gary now. I think Ray Merchant of Asphodel
Gary's much better.
Is just like, for people who don't know, Gary, it's 3 mana, double black.
Why is that not on here,
when it enters the battlefield? What?
Why is that not on here for a finisher? I feel like Gary...
I don't know. I think we forgot it.
Yeah.
Let's throw in Gary real quick. I would give that one an A,
really
personally.
Finish the game. Like,
Yeah, that's
Gary's really just life
does.
cushion, right?
really.
I think Gary usually does. Like, it's like
When you have like
enters the
30.
game, enters the battlefield, drains each opponent for X, and you gain that much life. And X is equal to your devotion, the number of black symbols on your permanents. So Gary has 2, so you drain everybody for 2, and you gain that much. So usually it's like 6. But it's like
Just need
Exsanguinate on a
38
creature.
more.
Yeah,
Devotion or...
But the fact that like
you can
and then
reanimate
it's so
it.
like blinkable
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
reanimate,
sure, okay.
like you loop it so easily that I think it's like way better than Exsanguinate, because of the fact that you could like repeatedly get it, and also I think it's more mana efficient too. Like if you just have a board of a couple, if you're like a mono black deck and you have just like a couple other permanents on the battlefield, you're like going to be quickly doing like drain you for 10 or whatever without having to spend 12. You know, so I don't know. I like it. I think Gary's good.
I love Gary, but I don't know if I'm buying the Gary as a finisher. Like, is my Esper Sentinel a finisher? Because it could attack 40 or 120
Gary
times.
Gary is so much better than that.
Is Exsanguinate a finisher?
I
I
feel-
think they're both finishers.
I feel like for me, Gary's a card that I love to play in black decks, but it's usually more of like a stabilization card than when I'm building my deck. I'm thinking of it like, okay, I can gain some life, I can stabilize, rather than, oh, this is my Crater Hoof for my black deck. But it is very
Does it
good.
seem-
Like power level,
Yeah.
I'd probably give it an A, I guess. Although I still don't know if I would define it as a finisher personally.
All right, that's fair.
Ga-
That's fair.
Really?
I think it's.
Gary's
more of
definitely
I've
more of a
finished people.
finisher than any of the other. Like, I guess, like I think it's more of a finisher than Torment. I think it's more of a
What?
yeah.
No.
Torment of Hailfire is not what it once was. I'm telling, and it's like,
What?
I don't know.
How are you gonna
Gary,
get 40 pips? 40 pips is so many. That's so many pips.
40 pips, but like you can reoccur it. So, like, how many times have I won with Gary? Many. Like, seriously, Gary has slayed so many people, or I've lost to Gary. Gary actually kills the whole table a lot more than you think he does.
I mean, but is that because people are like, it's late in the game and everyone's down at 7 life or something, and you're like, haha, like, gotcha? Or did Gary actually do, I don't know, like, it's not like a Crater Hoof or Insurrection. When I think of a finisher, I'm thinking, like, boom, like, I just hit you in the face for 200 damage. And Gary is, that's a lot of pips. That's a lot of pips if you're going to do that with Gary. I mean, I love Gary, though, so whatever. We can call it a finisher and give it an A. I'm fine with that.
We're going fast and loose today. It's fine. All right. Speaking of very good and very specific decks, there's 2 cards. Seth, you throw onto your list that are very good for artifact decks. Finishers. Cyber Drive Awakeners, number 1. It's a recent card from the Neon Kamigawa pre-constructed deck. Printed this year, I think. I don't remember. Everything's a blur. 5 in blue, so 6 mana total for a 4/4 artifact creature construct flying. Other artifact creatures you control have flying, and when it enters the battlefield, until end of turn, each non-creature artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 4/4. So the original intent of this card, because it was printed in the vehicle deck, is basically your vehicles are, if they're not crewed, they're not creatures. So all of your creatures essentially become crewed, and they all have flying, and you can smash people for lethal that way. But it gets much better, especially if you have just like treasures. It's treasures. It's clue tokens as well. Yeah. Very good. Food. If you have those type of things littered on the battlefield, they all become 4/4 flyers, and you can immediately smash in and kill. And same idea with the second card, Rise and Shine. This is a 2-mana sorcery with Overload. So the non-Overload is target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 0/0 artifact creature. Put 4+1/+1 counters on each artifact becomes a creature this way. Or you can overload it for 6 mana, and then all your non-creature artifacts become 4/4s that can smash in and crush people. So same idea. They're all your non-creature artifacts become 4/4s. Cyber Drive is more expensive, or Cyber Drive gives them flying. This one does not, but this one's permanent. And for the ratings, I guess just like Bs all around. Bs.
I think they're probably Bs all around. I mostly want to mention them because I'm not sure how many people knew about them, especially Cyber Drive Awakener. And when I asked on Twitter what people's favorite Commander finishers were, there were several people that shouted out Cyber Drive as like their favorite finisher in all of Commander. And I think it's actually like a pretty good finisher with those things you mentioned. You're either playing like some sort of artifact deck, like an Urza style deck or Brea, some sort of straight up artifact themed deck, or you're playing some sort of artifact token deck, Lannis or something that's making a lot of treasure tokens, a lot of clue tokens. This is a pretty legit way to close out the game. You could almost compare it to like the blue Craterhoof in some ways. The combination of like flying and making all your things into 4/4s. I feel like you should at least be able to one-shot someone. Even if you're just playing a bunch of mana rocks, you can probably one-shot someone with this. And if you're actually like built around it, you probably can possibly kill the entire table in one turn. So I mostly...
Is it expensive?
It's like
because
$3, $2.
I gotta get this then, because Rise and Shine is my win condition in my Lonus deck. Ooh. And the Awakener seems like way better. I just didn't know it existed, honestly.
It's creature, right? So it's even better in Lonus. Yeah, and you're in green, so you can tutor it up easier.
Yeah.
It's really good, but it's like in a pre-con. Just like Spectacular Showdown, I don't think most people know that it exists.
We get so many
because
pre-cons.
They're just like in pre-cons, and we have like 50 of them each year now, so it's like, whatever.
I can't even keep up with all the pre-con cards anymore. Yeah. This is what I do all the time, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I missed the card. I don't know if was it out when I built the deck? I'm almost sure I run...
Kamigawa is when it came out, so
it was in the
it's been about almost a year.
Maybe it was just short of me building this deck. I remember playing like Oversimplify and stuff from the Strixhaven one, but I don't know. I gotta get this card because this might actually end games and stop me from dawdling around too much, and it synergizes with my games.
Yes, please kill us.
Kill us, Phil, please.
Yeah, that's right. Is it on Magic Online?
No, God, no.
Probably.
I thought
Imagine.
God, no.
Wait,
they added the whole...
It is available online. Hallelujah. Oh my God, it is. They put it online recently.
Way to go, Moto. But yeah, good job. If you're not playing an artifact deck, you have no use for this card. But if you are, keep it in mind. If you've never heard of it before, look it up because it's only a couple of bucks and it is a decent way of finishing the game.
I don't even think it's artifact decks, though, honestly. I think it's more just like a Lonus deck. Because, I have an artifact deck, and I have a lot of artifact creatures, and this does nothing from my artifact creature deck. Like, none of them get boosted. I don't really have non-artifact creatures in my deck, so it doesn't really do anything for me.
I mean, you also don't want to turn your valuable, like, mana rocks or like Aether Flux Reservoir into creatures that are very vulnerable. But clues, man, I got enough of them in Lonis. And I guess treasures and stuff as well, although blue has more to do with clues.
Well, like, the Awakener is great for that because it's only until end of turn. So they have flying, so they're not going to die to blockers or anything usually. And then after your turn, they become creatures again, or non-creatures again, so they're not going to get wiped or anything like that. So I think that's good, but it's just like, if they just pumped all my creatures, then that would be great. But it doesn't. It's just like, it's specifically, if you have treasures or clues or food, then I think these cards become really good. But if you're just like jamming it into like an average artifact deck, I actually don't think they're very good. You really have to have a lot of non-creature artifacts for them to be doing anything.
I guess that is true. You do need to have a lot of non-creature artifacts. I guess the other exception I might make is vehicles, just because along with turning them into creatures, you're probably getting attack triggers or combat damage triggers or whatever other shenanigans your vehicles are doing. So as a way to like turn on your vehicles for a turn without crewing, it's probably pretty good too. And
the Awakener gives them flying too. So some of the vehicles don't fly, so that's an additional boost too. I like that card a lot.
I should also say that I think Rise and Shine probably maybe should be a tier lower. I think turning them in is a finisher. It's fine if you kill people with it right away, but I don't like that it keeps my artifacts as creatures forever. I feel like that's just setting me up to get blown out by your wrath. So if you don't actually kill everyone, you're probably going to lose all your mana rocks and all your whatever that you're accidentally turning into creatures forever. So I would definitely rank Cyberdrive Awakener
on the spot, right? Like with
if you kill them as stop, then you're good. Then you're good. So if you got a bunch of treasures or clues or whatever, then it's fine. But I think Cyberdrive Awakener is like definitely the better of the two.
Yeah, it gives them flying. And also you're never going to like non-overload Rise and Shine. And then Cyberdrive Awakener is probably going to cost for cheaper because if you're like in an artifact deck or a creature deck, you're probably going to be able to put it onto the battlefield for less mana than the sorcery would. And you could find it easier too because it's a creature. So, and it's an artifact. And it's ETB. So there's a lot more synergy with an artifact creature than a sorcery in artifact-y decks. So they're really cool though. It's just kind of a shame that like there's so much product that like it's really hard to keep up. So this is why we have these podcasts. We're just talking about cards that we think might have slipped under the cracks recently. But yeah, so speaking of cards that slipped under the cracks, okay. So I wanted to talk about this actually when we were talking about like Torment of Hailfire and Exsanguinate. But there's one card that I put in as a finisher for Skull Tribal. And I think it's actually pretty good. It's Skull Storm. This was also printed in a pre-con. My boy Skullstorm, where are you? Where did I put it? Is it not on the list? Oh no, I cut it out. All right, 1 second.
I gotcha. Skullstorm. Yeah. It is 9 mana. It's a sorcery. It says when you cast it, you get to copy it for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone in this game, and each opponent sacks a creature, and each opponent who can't sack a creature loses half of their life rounded up. Take it away, Tomer.
So hear me out. So let's say you're a partner deck, for example. You have 2 low-cost partners. They're just dying left and right or whatever. You're recasting them a bunch of times. Or you just have like a low-cost... You have a low-cost commander or whatever. And it's dying. And you recast it like 3 times or something. Then you Skullstorm, where you get... like you cast it and you make 3 extra copies, 4 extra copies of this. Your opponents... It's basically a board wipe plus people lose like half their life total. So like if they're at like 30, they lose 15 life and they lose all their creatures. Like that seems really good. And then if they don't have creatures, if you cast this when they don't have many creatures out, then you're like, they go from like 30 to 15, from 15 to 8, or is it rounded down? It's rounded down to 7, and then from 7 to 3, and then 3 to 1, and then they're dead. So it's like, if you wipe the board and you Skullstorm, like, oof, oh boy. Yeah, like, yeah, okay, it's 9 mana, it's fine. But it's like, we were talking about like, oh, you can circumvent Torment, and oh, Exsanguinate, you have to spend so much mana. You have to spend like a silly amount of mana. But whereas this one, it's 9, fine. It's the same, yeah, it's a lot of mana, and your commanders have to die a lot. But like, if you're in a partner deck, for example, I think this card is really sweet. Or if you're in like Tiny Bones, then it's very thematic. 2-mana commander. It's going to die a lot. It's dude.
You do need
Skeleton.
to kill-
Virtus as well, right? The commander that actually has a partner, Virtus and Grom or something. I played them in the, like, it was actually a Half-Life tribal deck because Virtus already halves the opponent lives. And it works pretty well with, I mean, it doesn't really matter how much it costs because you have to recast your commanders and stuff. So it's a super late game card anyways. But yeah, it's pretty insane if you kill somebody with it. I mean, what's the minimum copies you want out of it, I guess? Yes,
God.
Like three copies, so you cast your commander 3 times. I'm the only one who likes it, by the way. I gave it a B. Crimin Phil C, and then Seth is just like, nah, with a D.
I don't cast my commander. I've gotten better at that, but this
gotten
card is
better at that.
I have improved. Actually, my real problem with the card, other than me not casting like statistically, didn't we do stats and we found out you cast your commander on average like 1.5 times a game or something? Like, if I'm remembering right. So I feel like you do need to be in a specific deck that's kind of actually trying to make this card good. But the real concern I have isn't this just like hosed by your opponent having creatures? Like if you get 3 copies, isn't it your opponent sacks 3 creatures and that's it for 9 mana?
If you get 3 copies, then you get 4. You
get the original. Right? Yeah, okay. So let's say you get 3 total copies, or 4. You cast your commander 3 times, so you get 4 total copies. Like, isn't a lot of times it's going to be like sack my bird, sack my token, like way to go, 9 mana. Like, have you actually had it work out, Tomer? I haven't played with it, so I shouldn't speak to it. Okay. It would be really sweet if it did.
No, Tomer, you did play this, right?
No, that was the.
I don't think I ever won with it. No.
If you could combo with Wrath the board and then this and cast your commander a bunch of times, that could do it.
I mean, yeah.
Massive brain play.
I won with it.
Tomer played the blue one of the cycle against us at some point, and it was really good, but the black one is very ambitious, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I played the blue one, and I copied like a bunch of stuff. It's copy like artifacts or something like that. You make token copies of artifacts or something like that. And this one is just like a finisher. I mean, the downside, the bar of this, if you cast a commander 3 times, and yes, it's a lot, but like you have 4 copies, it doesn't make you sacrifice your own creatures. It's like a one-sided wrath. But like you get them 1 time and they lose half their life. 1 time, they don't have 1 creature to sacrifice. Boom, lose half their life, and then they're all juicy and vulnerable for lethal swing or something like that. I don't know. Maybe it's not that good. All right. Maybe it's not good.
It is cool.
Skullstorm.
It seems like a fun like challenge to win with card. Like if you can say you won with Skullstorm, that would be a good story to have in the back pocket.
If you're bored of Torment of Hellfire and Exsanguinate, but you still need that finisher, pick a commander that's pick a commander that's low cost that everybody hates and will kill on spot, and then you're like, bam! Well, you killed my commander that fed into my plan. You fool! You activated my trap card. Skullstorm you. Dude.
Tomer's infomercial is like, are you tired of winning games of Commander? Are you tired of casting good Magic cards? Well, then do I have a Skullstorm for you?
Torment of Hailfire, boring. And I just like put the stamp thing on the screen.
So
Insurrection,
good.
Too easy. Try out the
Tired
new
of getting just tormented of
Skullstorm.
Hailfire. Boy, do we have the hoops for you.
Just cast your commander many, many times and then hope for the best and hope your opponents don't have creatures and you win the game, maybe.
Is it cast from the command zone?
It
or
is,
could you just bounce?
Command zone, yeah.
Otherwise, you could probably get some crazy numbers.
Please.
It would have been OP otherwise.
Oh, it would have been a little bit too good for 9 mana. All right, fine. I don't win anybody over for this one. I'll concede. I'll concede that one. Do we have anything else that we wanted to talk about? Oh, there's another value card here that Phil really likes. I don't know. The finisher aspect of this is going to be strange, but I do think it's sweet. This is Amanatu's Augury. 8 mana sorcery, 6 and double blue. It says, exile the top 8 cards from your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield. Until end of turn, for each non-land card type, you may cast a card of that type from among the exiled cards without paying its mana cost. So you could get up to like 8 hits, I think. It's like land, creature, planeswalker, artifact, enchantment,
instant, sorcery, tribal.
No. Oh yeah. Instant sorcery and with tribal. Really?
Tribal's a card type, right?
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, but okay, fine. Up to 9, I
Tarmogoyf
guess. Yeah.
Your bitter blossom. Your bitter blossom.
Sorry, up to yeah.
That would be 8, I think. I think it's 8.
Yeah, that would be 8.
Did I rank it as? Man, this is almost...
No, Phil put it as an A.
Okay, at least.
Seth and I B. Crim C. I think I'm probably going to put it...
Okay, so full disclosure,
me.
whenever I cast this card, I somehow manage to get Memnoric Deluge with it, so I instantly afterwards copy the same thing 3 times, so I get the top, 30 cards or something, and can play my deck, and this worked 2 times already, so for me it's an A, and it's a finisher. It's probably not. It's probably literally a B, because you really have to structure your deck in a way that can cast a big sorcery, but also has creatures, artifacts. And so it's usually, I played it in like spell slinger type decks, but with like stuff like primal amulets and creatures that like Baral that makes spells cheaper, and then you need to copy it. Man, it's more like a fun win, honestly. You win the game because you had the most fun. Let's say it like this. That's why it's an A for me.
I like that you like it, because I like seeing it.
We've seen Phil do crazy
random,
things with it. Like, we have seen Phil win games. I believe he won a game with it. Although, I think most of Phil's finishers are the cards that, when he plays them, we're like, oh my god, we gotta finish Phil. I think he might have misunderstood the theme of the podcast, and it's cards that make us finish him before he kills all of us.
Yeah, how many times has Phil won the game after resolving this, or how many times has he immediately died because we had to band together? But it is really powerful.
Is a finisher.
Like, you can
of sorts.
cast up to 8 mana. You get to cast basically 8 spells, and you circumvent the mana cost because you get to cast them for free. So, like,
Yeah.
I mean, probably not going to have a tribal thing, but if you had 7, that's like really good. But just like the odds of getting that much is. Oof. You need to have like a very specific deck. Like, it has to be evenly distributed card types, and then you probably need some sort of like top deck manipulation.
I mean, really, though, like, if you think about it, even if you hit 4 or 5, it's not bad, because you're going to cast them for free, too. So if you're, like, drawing 4 cards and casting them for free, that's still not bad for 8 mana.
And you can sequence them. Like, you can play them
In
the way you like. Like, if you have, like, a fog effect and a Blatant Thievery in there, you can play Blatant Thievery and then copy it on the stack.
Well, that's you were like casting like instant speed spell copying and then the spell. Like you were able to get that all from your piles of this, right? Something like that. Yeah.
I don't know which deck exactly it was, but I was copying spells. Yeah.
I remember it looking absurd the few times you've done it, but it is narrow, I would say.
You really need a fill deck where it's just like big haymakers dot deck. Like, if I was building like original Joda or something, I'd play this. Or anything that lets me cast it for free. I'd like Jaleva or something. I'd play this.
That's
I mean, if you have Soul Ring on turn 1 every game, it's probably a staple. You're like a quarter of the way there on turn 1.
You're good. You're halfway. Krim does not like this, though. This is a C. But you love Amanatu. I don't understand. You don't like her augury?
I don't like her augury. Just seems like oftentimes I whiff.
Yeah,
it's too much RNG.
Even brainstorms for you, right? Like that's even better.
I mean, the brainstorming's nice, but it's still too much RNG for me. I don't know. I don't like it. I've cut it from my decks. I like Amanatu, and I wish she'd get more cards, but this is also just a little too high up in cost for me. And I really don't like the RNG of an 8 mana spell like that.
Yep.
Fair. All right, one day. I want to see more Amanatu's augury now. I kind of forgot.
I just want to see more cards with Amanatu that aren't her augury.
Wasn't she on like a promo or something recently? I think she's gonna like team up with like. Wasn't there like she was like on a promo? I swear she was like on like a promo post or something recently-ish. I thought she was gonna show up in like Dominaria United or something.
I thought she was in Double Masters. Well, a lot more.
Yeah,
she was on
maybe
that's what it
Double
was.
Masters. Oh, okay. Yeah. Whoops.
I mean,
But I kind of remember her being on some artwork of a reprint or something, but this might just be like Mandela effect type stuff.
I
not
really
like
want her to like show
Thomas.
up at the end of like the Phyrexian War or something, and like Alice Norn has defeated all the Planeswalker, and then this little girl shows up and she just like Thanos snaps.
Bodies the entire.
She shows up and auguries them all into oblivion, whatever that means.
like bladed thievery, like all these like haymakers just like come out, and like Alice Norn has been defeated, and all of Phyrexian army gets like stolen. Little girl shows up, destroys. Anywho,
I know we're running out of time, Tomer, but you did miss one card that, and I think this is probably intentional because you have it ranked as a D and everyone else ranked it as a S. I'm just going to say, I know you said we couldn't talk about all win cons, but technically Divine Intervention doesn't say win the game on it.
Yeah.
okay, what does it do? So,
It's 8 mana. It's an enchantment. It comes into play with 2 counters on it. And during upkeep, remove a counter. And when the last one is removed, the game is considered over and it's a draw. It draws the game. Me, Grim, Phil, S tier, literally across the board. Tomer, D tier. Tomer, why do you not like Divine Intervention? You need to explain yourself in the next 3 minutes before the podcast runs out. The viewers want to know, Tomer, why do you hate fun?
I'm literally the only one here who has won with Divine Intervention. Not even
Nobody
one.
won, actually. So.
Yeah, I've drawn with Divine Intervention on Commander Clash. The record can show it that I have achieved. No, I can't even say victory. But it's like
You achieve. It's a victory.
if we
sorta.
define finishers as cards whose primary purpose is to win you the game, this literally does not. It literally, by the text on the card, does not win you the game. It draws you the game. It's 8 mana for this effect, and you have to wait 2 turns unless you have ways of removing the counters earlier.
I'll give Tomer
It
that.
is-
It is not a win condition.
It's if winning is trolling your opponents, then yes, I think
Trolling.
it's a win.
Trolling.
I mean, that is
group
that
This
and
is,
drawing
again,
cards. This
peak
ultimate
casual
win.
magic. You didn't know. Nobody won. Everybody
It's not
hates when
about
someone else
the-
wins, so...
It's not about the destination; it's about the journey. The divine visitation makes sure that the journey is painful too.
I don't know about
I
that.
just don't get the card, honestly. Like, obviously, S it kind of stands for satire there in the rating. But how do you... why... It's like a peace treaty on the table. It's over. I don't know how this card came to be. It's on the reserved list.
Oh, it's
So
hundreds and
I-
hundreds of dollars. Yeah, so you'll never actually get. None of us will ever play with it in person. But I think I just had to slip it on here because until Wizards prints a bunch more draw the game cards and we can do a draw the game tier list, I don't know nowhere else to put it. And I love the cards. So
The card is
We
funny.
have to ask Mark
Card is very
Rosewater
funny.
what's him on the storm scale if you draw the game.
It just doesn't
There's
make
no
any
other-
Are we
sense,
getting
honestly.
more?
there's no other ones, right? This is it. I don't think there's another
That's it.
card in Magic that can do it. Yeah,
That's it.
I mean, it doesn't make sense. It just ends the game
It's what we
the
need.
most anticlimactic way. Yeah, but it just... I mean, you gotta appreciate the card for this. It just does
I want
such a unique thing.
I want for this is what I want. I want like a super ultra pushed version of You Draw the Game that's like vintage playable. Like it's so good that it will consistently do it. And then like you have to ask, like, do I just run this in the sideboard if I think I have a bad matchup or something, and then I'll just like intentionally draw instead of trying to lose? Like, can you imagine? Next
people
level
would be
plays for that.
so tilted. Oh, it'd be great.
And it would be a Universes Beyond card too. I make sure it's like a Universes Beyond or something like
Fortnite,
that.
draw the game. Magic players will
Draw
love it.
the game, 1-drop Ragavan. If it deals combat damage, you draw the game. Like, and it has like menace and flying. Yes.
Oh, so
yes.
good.
All right. So that is our list, everybody. That's an hour and a half of finishers. As always, if you're interested in seeing all of our rankings, because we ranked 40 cards this time, you can check it out in the article on mtggofish.com. So if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, iTunes, wherever, head on over to mtggofish.com, check out the article for podcast 66, and you'll see all of that there. Also, if you're on YouTube and watching this, then it'll be pinned in the top comment section. And yeah, let us know what your favorite finishers are, what we missed. Again, we skipped cards that specifically say you win the game, except for you draw the game on this one, because we're going to be talking about this in a follow-up podcast. So yeah, that's the big thing there. So again, like and subscribe if you like that sort of stuff. We'll be back next week with probably a Vegas special, because we're all going to be in Vegas for the October 30th celebration and all that stuff. So until then, friends, see ya.